feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Hey everyone, this is Mark Scribner, your host of the Shrimp Tank. Today, I have two amazing guests that are in an emerging, exciting space. It's the crypto space, but they're doing it slightly different than your standard like Coinbase, Robinhood type stuff out there. I'm excited because you really can't go anywhere on the internet, Reddit, wherever you may be. This space, as a financial advisor, it's probably the number one topic that we get to hear about every single day. Should we be invested in this space? I'd like to remind all our listeners we're nationally syndicated through iHeart, Stitch, Google, SoundCloud, Spotify. Basically anywhere that you can get your podcast, you can find us here. We are in 13 cities across the country. We'd love to get your followership. You just smash that like button, if you will, and the subscriptions. You'll get that alert in your alerts where this show and all the prior shows from across the cities will appear. So with that said, I'd like to bring on AJ. AJ Neri is his name, and Sean Waters. They are representing HeightZero is the name of the company. They're Massachusetts-based guys, but they're building out a global footprint across the country in a space in the crypto, and they're doing it in a slightly different way than, as I mentioned, in the Coinbase, the Robinhoods, the do-it-yourselfer kind of concept. They're leveraging their expertise from a platform perspective inside the financial registered investment advisor space, where they are going about doing due diligence and giving the tools and the resources for expert financial wealth management advisors to be able to deploy these ideas and these techniques to their client base with a due diligence and a platform background. So with that said, I'd like to welcome both of you to the show today. And I know that Sean and I talked a little bit offline prior about the concept, so I feel like I have a good understanding of what the offering that you folks are offering. So with that said, welcome to the show.
I appreciate it, Mark. Thank you. Thanks for having us on.
So let's get into the thick of it. One of the taglines of the show is where street smarts and book smarts collide. And you guys at the core are entrepreneurs, and we get to feature and talk to some of the greatest entrepreneurs in and around the country. But this is a newer concept for a lot of people, and you're laying groundwork for a newer concept that has regulations, it has education, a lot of moving parts that are out there. But I guess my first question is, do you view yourself as more of a technology company at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are not an RIA. We're not a broker dealer. We're purely a technology company. And it might actually make sense for me to just take a step back and give the audience, a little bit of my background. I'm the co-founder of HeightZero. My entire background is in asset management. In 2007, I started at a firm called Windward Investment Management. It was, I always say it's an ETF strategist before that was even a thing. So I started there. We grew that business to about $4.5 billion and sold it to Charles Schwab in 2010, and then grew it to $20 billion from there. It changed names to Windhaven for, I think, copyright purposes when we sold it to Schwab. But from there, I worked for another ETF strategist and then launched 4 ETFs for Natixis. And Natixis, for those who aren't familiar, I just explained it as the Fidelity of Europe. They're based out of Paris. They have about $1 trillion in assets. So my entire background is in financial modeling, ETF trading, and asset management. My co-founder is a cryptographer. I started trading Bitcoin in 2016. He started trading in 2011. And so he's not on the call right now, but if you saw him, he's a lot younger and a lot wealthier than I am because of that. So, so that's kind of the co-founding team, where we've got a little bit of asset management and a little bit of technology. And so I feel like, from my experience in managing an RIA, it really allows us to understand exactly what the advisors need. We started this company because we knew that there were advisors that were getting inbound calls from their clients, and they either said, I don't know, or they were sending them to the sort of retail platforms that you said earlier. I think that, part of that issue is that if you're sending your clients to like a Coinbase or Robinhood, it may be or someone may think that you're actually recommending that platform, and that might be a little dangerous from a legal side. Or the advisor could just say, I don't really know. And that's also not a great that's not a great answer. So I think that was the reason that we built the platform, really to help the advisors kind of bridge that gap between the clients and the sort of digital asset education exposure.
Okay, great, thank you, Sean. Let's give a little bit of background of you, so pull you into the fold.
Great, yeah. So I started off in brief stint in healthcare and then spent the majority of my career in financial services. So I worked at Fidelity Investments and had a unique opportunity there where I was able to be part of an emerging business unit, and actually even more specifically within that, build a reporting function from the ground up. So I like to say I was part of a startup within a much bigger corporation. And so getting to see the business world from that lens was really interesting. And so I did that for almost about 15 years. And then more recently went off on my own and started a company that was focused on building back-end applications for the food and beverage industry, specifically restaurants. So trying to help them get more efficient, which was, again, a great experience. And having the opportunity to kind of build something from nothing is always something that I enjoy. So that business gave a great opportunity to get more experience in the entrepreneurial side of things. Unfortunately, COVID hit, and so it was a bit of a rough go at it for a while, being tethered to the food and bev industry. And that's where AJ and I started talking, and he kept explaining to me this company he had been working on for a while, and I think it was just really resonated with me in the fact that I was really interested in crypto. I'd started trading in it as well, but to be able to kind of take a technology component and apply it to that space, and to help an aspect of it and a segment of the market that up to that point had been very underserved, just really struck a chord with me, and it kind of spoke to a lot of my past experiences achieving the same thing, where you're going after an underserved market and trying to use technology solutions to help make the experience much better for them. So when you kind of took all those things together and combined it, for me, it was like a no-brainer. Hey, like where can I help out? Where can I get on board? And since then, it's been a great ride. Mm-hmm.
So, fintech is notorious for a lot of dead bodies in that space, just because of the many different obstacles that, if you're talking about the advisor side, you have to go through multiple gatekeepers, if you will. And, notoriously, it's a difficult space to try to penetrate, just because, you can have the best mousetrap ever, but if the broker dealer or the teams, if you will, behind there decide that they don't understand it primarily, and that's usually what happens. If they don't understand it, they emphatically just say no. But tell me about your thinking in terms of, like, you have technology, you guys are technology proficient, but why did you figure out this particular avenue to go on the advisor side in terms of your offerings?
Yeah, that's a great question, because when we started off, we were trying to figure out, we knew that we wanted to service the RIA space and the broker dealer space, but we had to figure out whether there's enough business to do that, as well as exactly why. And what we found was, there are three types of people that would be interested in digital assets. One is the retail investor, and that was already being serviced by Coinbase and Robinhood and all the other retail platforms out there, PayPal now. We're not going to compete with them. We don't really want to, because we're sort of looking at the asset class as sort of a different type of exposure in terms of an overall portfolio. The second were like those really large institutions, like Harvard University, their endowment, the CalPERS. I'm just using these examples. I don't know if they own Bitcoin, but those really large institutions where they could call up their broker dealers on the street that they already had and say, okay, I need to buy 200 million in Bitcoin. How do I do that? And because they're such large clients, they're going to get white glove treatment. Okay, custody it here. We'll trade it here. This is the execution cost you can expect, and then they'd be fine. But then there was that third group of the financial advisors, where they were really being ignored because there was no access for their clients to actually invest in the asset. And so we really honed in on that. You brought up a great point in terms of gatekeepers and all that kind of stuff. That's not new to me, having launched some ETFs, because, if you want to get on certain platforms, you have to have X amount of track record and X amount of AUM. I would say digital assets, Bitcoin, Ethereum, those are a little different because a lot of people are trying to get that exposure, and it's in the news a lot. So it's a little different selling that in, but you're right. We still hit those hurdles now. Just to be completely transparent and honest, we really don't sell to the wirehouses and some of those BDs, because we know that from a compliance standpoint, there are very few things that they can invest in. We know that some of them can't even invest in GBTC, which is that sort of unit trust that Grayscale launched. So we really focus on the independent broker dealers, the independent financial advisors, independent RIAs. And the good news is, in the past decade, 15 years, we've seen a lot of RIAs move from those traditional wirehouses, take their book of business, go independent. And, you've got these extraordinarily successful companies like LPL and Commonwealth and all these fintechs that are now providing that infrastructure for them to succeed. And I think we would like to be just another cog in that wheel of, come to HeightZero for your digital asset exposure. We can deliver all the information you need in terms of managing your clients' assets, just like you would an equity or fixed income position. So that's a great question.
Yeah, thanks. No, so is your offering, do you foresee it, or is it right now? Is it a bolt-on, or is it kind of a standalone kind of experience? Like, yeah, we got the approval to, be able to offer this or work with it, but are you integrating your technology with the wealth advisors technology?
Absolutely. So we've already integrated, with quite a few platforms. So all the reporting, all the functionality that you normally would use, you can use through HeightZero. But it is also a standalone platform. So if you wanted to manage your just your specific digital asset portfolio on that platform in the tiered structure that we have, and maybe I should go into that, where there's a top level RIA level, and then all the FAs underneath there, and then clients underneath that. So it's a tiered system, so that, for both security reasons, as well as, making it easy for reporting and things like that. So you could either manage it there, or on your existing fintech platform, you can go ahead and manage that as well. We can deliver all the information necessary to view your client's entire portfolio holistically.
Okay. And so go ahead. Sorry, Sean.
Sorry, Mark, just to add on to that point too, I think that was a deliberate decision as well, to be able to offer these multiple connection points, and understanding that for some people, they just want to get up and running right away. And so having that standalone UX is huge. And that if we had someone come to us tomorrow and said, hey, I just want to start using your platform, there's the capability to do so, but also realizing that, to AJ's point, we do want to be sort of this cog in a bigger wheel. You had to have those connection points into some of the other established platforms out there. So being able to deliver both at different points in time, I think is a big selling point to the RIA.
Yeah, one of the things, maybe if you want to comment on this, but one of the difficulties in this particular space is it is new, and you had that analogy about laying down train tracks and kind of building things that are going on over and over. But it's still, to this day, because it's new, you see things like the SEC kind of grappling with the space. More recently, and I'm not sure if this is accurate, but it's what I read last night, that the SEC somewhat punted back to the derivatives and the commodities exchange, saying not all assets, but they view, at least taking Bitcoin, Cardano, some of the others, they're more or less pushed it over to say, the derivatives world, you need to start to regulate that, because we kind of view it more as a regulated commodity. Then you have FINRA, and you have all these different regulatory bodies that are still trying to put their arms around it, as well as the IRS and things like that. But how difficult is that, since you have, fintech, you have an awesome platform, all those things are great, you're awesome executioners in that regard, but you're still dealing with the uncertainty of how some of this is going to be regulated, or how it's going to pan out. How do you approach that?
Yeah, Sean, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about this, and then talk a little bit about the new feature we have from the regulatory side on the platform. And then I can fill in, honestly, because you asked also about the ETF and the commodities, and I'd love to talk a little bit about the spot ETF and the futures ETF that was already approved. So go ahead, Sean, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So there's a couple different prongs to our approach from a regulatory perspective. So first is in terms of what we offer on the platform from an asset perspective. So we're very conservative in making sure that we're not just opening up our clients to this broad swath of tokens and cryptocurrencies, we're very specific in terms of the assets that we make available and ensuring that we're taking a very conservative approach in that in terms of they're typically assets that the SEC has already at least weighed in on some form or fashion to state that they're a non-securitized asset. And so with that, we know that we feel a little bit more comfortable allowing the advisors in turn to offer that to their clients. And that's something obviously we continually reassess. So as things change in the marketplace, we can adjust, whether that means it allows us to open up more assets, which is great, or if we need to take a step back, we're constantly monitoring that and making sure that we're not putting the advisors in a difficult position in terms of they're offering something to their clients that they otherwise shouldn't be. The other aspect to it that I think is important too is the custody model itself in terms of how we're set up and how we manage the actual ownership of these assets. So when the clients get onboarded into the system, each one of them is established with their own wallet at the custodian. So the key to that is that the advisor has no sort of, they only have trading authority over the account and funding authority. They never actually have the ability to take possession of said asset. Only the client and in turn the custodian can authorize the transfer of assets in or out of that wallet. So it just helps to ensure
they can't withdraw. They can't withdraw the
exactly.
asset. Right. Okay.
Yeah. So they technically never become the custodian of said assets. And so from an ownership perspective, it helps apply some additional protections to the advisor themselves.
Yeah, and I can touch a little bit on the sort of FINRA, SEC, futures regulation. I think that getting back to what you said about the regulations changing, we're very cognizant that that's the case, and so we update the platform appropriately. But that the Bitcoin ETF was approved late last year, and there are a bunch of companies are interested in issuing a spot ETF, and I think that that's definitely a different animal. I think that the SEC might be a little hesitant to approve a spot ETF because it might set sort of precedent for some other spot digital assets that they may not be able to say no to, and that might be so. I think they're going to take their time, and they did just sort of extend the comment period on I think 2 of them recently. So I think as anyone who tells you what the SEC is going to do, I think is fooling themselves, because obviously they keep everything very close to the vest. However, I think that if you just keep an eye on it and sort of use the different tools that we have to make sure that you're up with the latest regulation, it's definitely something that can be navigated.
Okay, that's great. And so you obviously, you start this company, you have to make a decision what direction you're going, which you isolated your market in terms of where the opportunity was. How big do you think the opportunity is for your particular company in the segment that you're trying to focus on?
Sure. Well, I mean, all our clients, we sort of look at this when we talk to our financial advisors and RIAs as well as their end clients, is that, this should be a small piece of their overall portfolio. We would never go into someone and say, you should put 50% of your assets in, that is, fiduciarily irresponsible. But we also feel like it's fiduciarily irresponsible to have no exposure to these digital assets, whether it's, and it kind of depends on what your investment thesis is, whether you believe it's a inflation hedge or it's a store of value. I mean, there's so many different investment theses for the different types of assets. So, we always recommend that treat this as it's like an alternative investment in your portfolio. So, 2% allocation, 3% allocation, if the overall allocation for alternatives is 5 to 7%, then that seems like a very reasonable, allocation. To make my compliance happy, we're not giving investment advice here, but that's what we feel like from that standpoint, from a portfolio construction allocation seems reasonable. And so that's kind of where we come down on how we think advisors.
So is it a $1 trillion opportunity? I mean, I know the economics around, like, where do you think it is, in terms of the opportunity in this particular space?
Yeah, I mean, for our business, because we're only in the independent RIAs, independent financial advisors, it's definitely in the billions. But that's also completely taking out the wirehouses and all the money that sits there, and all the money in the private banks that we're not necessarily able to access yet. And it's very possible that our platform won't be able to, but when they roll out those different products for their platforms, it will grow sort of the entire pie of the digital asset. So I mean, trillions for the total digital asset, yes, but from like an exposure for like those independent space, definitely probably in the hundreds of billions.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you started this, you made a conscious decision to, start, I wouldn't call it a limited offering, but, you are providing some due diligence. Like, you're not coming at this and going, yeah, we're going to add Shiba Inu to our platform. Maybe you are or you're not, but I know there's a lot of chatter, like, that big, writing campaign for, hundreds of thousands of people lobbying Robinhood to try to get onto that platform. But let's talk about how, when you started the offering, how you came about the token assets, the digital assets that you're offering. What was the thinking behind starting with the offering that you have?
Sure. So we knew that we wanted to take a conservative approach from the beginning, but mainly because we thought that that's really what the advisors wanted, right? I think it was definitely going to be walk before you run. And so we did take a Bitcoin and Ethereum only allow that allocation to start with. And we've since increased a little bit from there. But the reason we looked at those is we looked at them because the SEC did come out and say that they thought these were non-security digital assets. So that's why we started there. And I think that we never wanted to get in the situation where the SEC sued Ripple because they said it was a security, and then immediately it had to get pulled off of Coinbase and a bunch of the other platforms. And so, because I believe they didn't have their broker-dealer license at that time. So we, and then we wouldn't want our clients or the SEC to come to our clients and say, well, you were selling a non-registered security to your investors and now you're in trouble, because that, frankly, our business implodes at that point. So, we definitely decided to take a conservative approach there and run our assets by counsel and say, okay, is this a security? Is it not? Here's why. And also look at the market. If you look at some of the assets that the other platforms have, we are still a more conservative. We take a more conservative approach. Depending on, I think there are some that are offering about 40 assets. I think we have about 10. So that's kind of how we whittle it down. I mean, I think I was telling you earlier that we lost a client because they came to us and said, my son can, this hedge fund said, my son can invest in all these things on Robinhood. And I was like, well, we're not gonna let you do that. And just because you can buy something doesn't mean you should buy something. So we'll continue to take a conservative approach. And like you said, we'd always like to err on the side of caution from that regulatory standpoint, rather than open things up, and ask, was it better to ask forgiveness? We don't really feel like that's the case when we're talking about, these digital assets in this new emerging market.
Yeah, that's great. So, both of you have had a great track record of startups and some probably liquidity events. It sounds like AJ with, some sales, and same with Sean. What are some of the obstacles that you've had so far?
Sean, you want to bring a few?
Sure. Now, meaning we're specifically to HeightZero itself?
Yeah. Just this fintech offering. I mean, we could talk about, it seems, is it a capital intensive business? I guess I'd be curious about, but what are some of the things, like, as you're an entrepreneur, both of you are, you're coming into a newer space. You have your experience that you've had in other lives, and obviously in financial services and product wise. But as you've kind of come into the, any entrepreneur, there's always, like, hurdles, and you're jumping around and you're problem solving at a very high level all the time. Without giving away anything proprietary, like, what are some of the things that you're like, wish you knew before and had to pivot?
Yeah. So I think, first off, to your point, there's certain challenges we face that I think you're going to face in any business, particularly in an emerging technology space. So first off is just education. It's trying to educate the market on the space, right? So we knew that there was an opportunity here, and we knew that there would ultimately be a demand, but sometimes trying to connect those two can be a bit of a challenge in terms of educating the advisor on, hey, Bitcoin or Ethereum or any of these other crypto assets are things that you might want to consider at some point rolling into your offering, and they would say, okay, yeah, it sounds kind of good, but I'm still a little worried, or I'm still a little concerned, or I just don't get it. I realize that some of my clients are asking for it, but I'm just not comfortable. So first off, just educating the marketplace on what it is we do, how we do it, and how it's ultimately set up with their best interest in mind to allow them to offer the best product to their clients, while still being able to tap into this very, I think, opportunity-rich environment. That's probably one of our biggest, I wouldn't say challenges, but sort of objectives, and one of the things that each and every day we're trying to ensure we're hitting upon within the marketplace. Aside from that, I think getting out and just getting that exposure, and trying to find the most efficient way to do that, whether it's just reaching out to people on a daily basis, kind of, picking up the phone and dialing for dollars, as we used to say in the old finance world, just trying to hit up people and explain again our services, or looking at, okay, are there more macro level approaches we can take? For instance, hitting the conference scene, which is something that we've started to get into a lot more recently, which can be a much more efficient way of trying to get out to a much broader group of people in a shorter, less resource intensive mechanism. And more importantly, I think it gets back to, it also helps us check off that education piece, right? So not only can we reach a broader audience, but in those mediums, we're allowed to, it gives us the opportunity to better educate the marketplace on, again, kind of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and why it's a benefit to them. So I would say those are probably the two biggest things, is kind of education and exposure, and again, I don't think that's necessarily unique to our specific business. I think those are things that you're always going to run into in any type of startup, particularly in emerging technology. That's, to a lot of people, still sort of this foreign thing. But ultimately, if you can deliver in those areas, if you can provide good education and get that exposure, ultimately, I think it's going to win out in your favor in the long run.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, let me piggyback on the education, but I'm gonna look at it from a different angle. All our partners that we work with, right? We're a technology platform. We're not, I said, an RIA or broker dealer. We're also not the custodian. And so the custodians that we work with, they're not Schwab or Wells Fargo or the traditional custodians that you have your equities with. And so part of the education that we dealt with, and sort of one of the struggles we had, was explaining the marketplace to the custodians, because they were getting inbound calls from family offices, hedge funds, and sort of what I would consider larger institutions and larger institutional money, but they had no experience with the RIA space, the financial advisor space, this absolutely massive $1 trillion industry that they were completely ignoring. And so sometimes I always felt like I was sort of, yelling into the abyss, where it's like there are all these people that could be your clients that need a solution. We just need to show them that we have one for them. And this is literally came out today that Gemini, which is one of the larger institutional custodians in digital assets, they just purchased our competitor BitRIA, which used to be Blockchain, and they bought them today, or at least they announced it today. And so I think that it's the understanding that these custodians think of themselves as different as traditional custodians, but they are now going to start servicing similar clients to the traditional custodians. So understanding that ecosystem is going to be extraordinarily important for them to grow their business. And so that was something that we honestly spent a lot of time sort of sitting down being like, here are all these clients and they need a solution. You should bring them a solution because it helps your business. It helps give them what they want. Oh, and by the way, we completely believe in the investments thesis. And, we know that there's a lot of information out there when you do the modeling that this is a good piece to have, good exposure to have a small piece of your portfolio in. So, it was kind of win, 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 but it took a long time and a lot of conversations to finally get there.
Yeah, that's tremendous. Not to disparage you guys at all, and hopefully this is not viewed as a slight by any means, but in that space where that acquisition happened, I mean, it's a very competitive landscape, and anything in fintech, but you have the likes of and I think I answered my own question, unfortunately, but you have these deep pockets, the Fidelities of the world, these bigger firms that they're more on the retail side, and I think this is where I answered my own question, is because you're focusing in a different population where there isn't really a space or a solution per se. But do you have competition? Are people that are kind of chasing the same angle in the same market space?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of competition right this second, but I mean, it's a good question because there will be more traditional players that are interested in custody assets. I know that State Street is working. They created a pretty big I guess digital asset team, for lack of a better term. I don't know if that's what they call it, but they hired a bunch of new people. So I mean, it's definitely something where other custodians are going to get involved. I hired the development team 3 years ago. So we've been developing this platform for a long time and we keep making improvements. And so we feel like the technology is well ahead of our existing competitors, as well as some other entrants that may want to sort of try and get into the space a little later. That is one thing that does concern me about the space, though, because we've been doing it for so long. There are sort of people, I think, that look at it as a hot thing, think that they might be able to make a little bit of money in it and sort of slap some platform together and try to go sell it. Maybe some will be good, but there's a good chance that a lot of them won't be very good because they're not thought out well enough. And you haven't put in the time and the due diligence to understand the security. And any black mark on any platform in digital assets is going to hurt the entire industry. So, that's definitely one thing that is concerning to me. My co-founder and I also own the company outright. We're sort of the only investors. So we feel like, we have a really good understanding of kind of what's coming next based on our relationships and kind of what the RIAs might need in the future. So I think that, that's there's definitely going to be competition. And by the way, the ETF is also going to be a competitor, right? Like I mean, there are good reasons to have direct exposure to the digital asset rather than just have a proxy like an ETF. But if you're an advisor and it's really easy for you to just say, hey, listen, I'm going to buy, whatever the ticker will be, BTC on the ARCA or the NYSE, and then go about my business. That's also something that's probably going to happen if they open up a spot. But the space is evolving so quickly that I think there's going to be plenty of opportunity for other assets where the sort of traditional market structure will be far behind, and there'll be opportunities for our clients and sort of their clients.
Yeah, and on that point too, I would just say, Mark, is that developing the blockchain is not easy. Like, it's not something you can just jump over to. So, to AJ's point about some of maybe these more traditional players trying to come from the traditional financial background, trying to come in and just slap something on it and try to think that we can just do the same thing over here. It's not as easy as it sounds. It's a much different beast to develop over in the crypto space. So the fact that we brought in the right people from the ground floor and built it up versus trying to kind of retrofit back into it, I think gives us an advantage. But it also, I think, is telling that it's not just something that we feel anyone can come in and do. It definitely takes a particular expertise and understanding that I don't think you're necessarily going to find in a traditional financial kind of firm.
Yeah, and so you leave it up to the financial team to make the determination on the allocation, or do you provide any resources or ideas? Like, in my world, we're advice. So, someone comes to us and we're looking at everything and we're like, this is a better alternative. This works. This doesn't work. But, you have a due diligence differentiator that's in here. But if the client's coming to you and they need help, like what resources would they have to be able to have that conversation? Because quite candidly, not only the consumers, but most of the financial advisors have no idea about this space at all, and they're neophytes, and they're looking for hopefully someone to be able to say, based on the risk and the timelines of this particular client, this is what they're trying to do. Are you helping them kind of formulate that decision making when they're looking at that 1 or 2% allocation?
Sure. So yeah, we definitely don't give investment advice, and we don't, have our own strategies that we run off the platform. So it is up to the advisor. However, the platform does allow you to create your own asset allocation, create your own strategy. So if you were to license a index from there are a few no free ads here, so I won't name them, but from the traditional index providers, there are a few that are now building out a digital asset index, and they have different methodologies, and they're ones that you would know from the traditional indexes in the equity and fixed income markets. So you could definitely license one of those, and we can either import the model or you can do the model yourself. So there are and there are also some digital asset advisors out there that are they claim to be experts, and I can't sort of vouch for anyone or wouldn't on the podcast, but there are definitely some that have been doing this for a while, have some pretty decent track record of real money they've been managing. So it's definitely out there. I would say a lot of our clients are in the sort of buy and hold strategy, though, right? It's not we, just to be transparent, our clients aren't trading a lot. They're certainly not high frequency traders or market makers or anything like that. It's really a lot of, I want this exposure, maybe I rebalance it quarterly or twice a year, or however you kind of want to manage that from the overall portfolio standpoint. But I think getting that exposure in a basic structure is still very attractive to just the traditional individual investor.
Yeah,
and on that point too, the one thing we have seen the emergence of is sort of these crypto index type tokens, where it's a token that represents positions in other tokens. So instead of having to go out and figure those allocations out and do it yourself and expose yourself to portfolio rebalancing and gas fees for the transacting to and fro, you basically just buy into this one token, and then they take care of the positioning on the back end. So there are some, just like you're seeing, just like you saw in the traditional finance world, where first it was mutual funds and then ETFs, you're seeing that similar progression now in the crypto space. So no surprise there, but there are options for which to make that asset allocation and selection easier, and that are starting to already come to market in the space.
Are there any in the fintech space? I mean, this is so, I think, different, but I'm just curious if you can liken this experience of what's going on now to any other evolution in the fintech space. Like, I know we talked about alternative investments and, the platforms that are built, and there's big, huge companies around that. And there's probably a ton in the SPAC space. But I'm just curious, is there anything that you kind of look back and go, this is kind of like, XYZ, or is there nothing at all?
I mean, I can't really think of anything, but if you want to get philosophical, as I've gotten older, I've sort of found that everything seems to accelerate. So the first, this is terrible, I don't even know when the first ETF was issued. I thought it was 99, but I might be wrong. But but it took 10 years to even get a moderate amount of adoption, right? Like, what's this ETF? And even then it's probably 15 until people were like, all right, I'm going to have my strategy of index mapping, global asset allocation, give me the cheapest fees possible, make Vanguard tons of money for offering, 3 basis points S&P ETF. That is the closest thing I can think of. But the huge difference is that we're truncating like 15 years into like 3. So it's just, it accelerates so fast. And I think that, and just to get back to our regulatory conversation, I think that's what the regulators are struggling with as well. Like, things move so quickly. Technology now is moving so fast that, I think regulators and lots of people are having a hard time keeping up, and change is difficult, right? So if you have a traditional, if you're a traditional financial advisor and you've understood the market for, it's been done this way for 30 years, and all of a sudden there's something that I need to understand that is a little different and a little harder. I mean, sometimes it's just challenging to do because it is a little complicated. And so, that's why we do take a basic approach and try to get that exposure, so that buy and hold. But I mean, that's kind of the only thing I could think of, but the markets are accelerating so fast that all of a sudden it's not that great of an analogy.
No, I think it is. That's what I thought when I was asking the question, the ETF space and Vanguard in the early days. And, it was a disruptor. And now, people for the most part poo-poo on, mutual funds and, the tax inefficiencies and all those things around that. I was curious, as you're kind of get into the weeds of this, are there types of partnerships that you kind of foresee, without naming companies or players, et cetera, but if you kind of do that SWOT map and kind of look like, this is where, we started, this is where we'd like to be, but what kind of partnerships do you think would be valuable to you to kind of push you to the levels that you want to get to?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we've had a lot of, I think if you're looking at that SWOT analysis, I think that the distribution is kind of where we're looking towards now for partnerships. We've had some success with some TAMPs, the turnkey asset management platforms. But, for our client base, we've really been relying on, my 15 years in the RIA space and building out that network and being, moderately successful there. So I've made some decent contacts and our initial clients have been people I've known for a long time and they've been happy. But, like Shawn said, dialing for dollars is great, but it's not the most efficient use of your time. And the hit rate for that, although digital assets tends to be and Bitcoin tends to be a little higher than other products, it still would be, helpful for us to really be partnered with a distribution partner where we could say, okay, here's the product, it's plug and play. It can be branded, whatever company it is that's the distribution partner, if that's necessary. And then all of a sudden, it's in front of their 100 RIAs versus us getting in front of 5 or, 3 a day when we're trying to set up calls and doing demos and things like that. I think that's the most important. Shawn, I don't know if you also have an opinion on that.
Yeah, I mean, to build off AJ's points, distribution is number one to us right now, right? Because as we're an emerging, growing business. But so that's obviously key. We have looked at other areas to help sort of supplement that, I would say. So whether it's looking at the type of assets that we're able to make available on the platform, or looking at certain technology integrations that'll make it easier for us to plug into said distribution channels, things of that nature. But they're all integrations that I think ultimately lead us to how do we improve our distribution.
And do you foresee potentially, the HeightZero is the name of the company for our listeners, and just remind everybody you can follow us on iHeart, nationally syndicated. But I'm curious if maybe a possibility of this is to private label. If companies don't want to push out the HeightZero name and they want to package it themselves and adopt the technology and the platform, could they private label it themselves?
Absolutely. And just so for the listeners know, the HeightZero, where the name comes from, is that the first block of any blockchain is called the Genesis block. And every block has a height, right? So whenever you're validating a transaction on the Bitcoin blockchain, it's got a height. I don't know where we are now. I should probably know that, but it's in the hundreds of thousands or millions. So whatever that height is, it keeps growing block by block by block. And so the Genesis block has a height of 0. So that's where the name comes from. But to answer your question, yes, if your client or our client wants to private label it and not use the HeightZero name, we're definitely amenable to that too.
So we're about to wrap up, but let's talk about somebody who isn't exposed as an advisor or anybody else in that space. Like, what should they be thinking in terms of the education? Like, how do they get themselves up to a level where they're competent enough, or from a fiduciary perspective, they feel like they're able to opine and start this conversation and look at leveraging this technology and getting representation in this space?
Sure. I mean, I think that there are a few things. We do help with the education. We'll educate the financial advisors as well as their end clients. And we spend some time at different conferences really talking to advisors, but we also feel like educating the end client is important too. So, a webinar with the advisor to sort of just explain, literally, we give the nuts and bolts. We frankly barely mention our company. It's basically just, this is what a blockchain is. This is the history of Bitcoin. This is Ethereum. Here's how they differ. And, basically at that point, it's already been 20 minutes. So we take a very, very blockchain 101, try to make it as basic as possible so people get the foundation and then can grow from there. From a financial advisor side and fiduciary side, we work with compliance teams. I'd say one of the more important things is the ADV. You definitely need to sort of disclose any fees that you're getting from the digital assets, but also that has to be one of the, in the ADV part 2A, I think it is, that needs to be disclosed that's one of the assets that you can invest in. And then there's some, disclosures that go in there. Those are the sort of the things I think are kind of the most important, understanding the basics of what it is you're selling, and then also sort of notifying your client, kind of legally and compliance wise of the investment. Then, those are the two sticking points I think that we hear about most.
And I would also say there, if you want to take it a step further, there are now organizations that offer certifications specifically for advisors in the space. There's actually a couple of them now that have come up that offer sort of a similar to like a CPA or CFA. They have a certified digital asset accreditation. There's also a lot of communities out there that you can get involved with, or what's they're often referred to now as DAOs, which is a decentralized autonomous organization. So you're going to hear that topic probably more and more. And it doesn't apply just obviously to the advisor space. It's something that's kind of more broadly being embraced as a way to sort of form these work groups or these organizations that sort of run autonomously, by utilizing certain blockchain technology. But there are certain ones that are specifically focused on the financial planner world that are great resources that you can get involved in as well. So,
in fintech, in terms of mergers and the multiples seem to be always the highest. You see some of these crazy valuations that you've heard in your careers. But oftentimes when people start businesses and serial entrepreneurs, they're thinking about that end game. You're going to get to a certain critical mass. And do you ever foresee and down the line if there's somebody waves a 3 or 5 or a 10x multiple because you've already created something and hopefully you've patented most of what you've done. But when being serial entrepreneurs, you're builders, do you ever kind of consider that if somebody came to you today and said, "Hey, we love what you do. We want to take you out"? Is that something that's in your current thinking at all?
Yeah, it's definitely something we think about. Everyone at the organization are problem solvers and we like building things. And so it's not something we spend a lot of time on, but we also understand that, what we've developed has value and it is pretty plug and play. And, we feel as though we can certainly make it better, and it's always improving. And I think that's kind of what we're really focused on. And we talked earlier about how fast the space changes, that also impacts our business, because if there's other types of products, like if we want to lend out the coin or do something like that, there's always other opportunities in the space. So it's not something that we focus on a lot. We focus on making the best product that we have. And then, and frankly, going out and getting clients, making sure our clients are happy. But it's definitely something we would entertain. But, we don't have a pitch book. We're not actively going out trying to raise capital or get the company sold because, frankly, we're too busy building it. And, at some point, maybe.
Great. Well, that's awesome. Well, I'm going to wrap it up. I'd just like to remind all our listeners, we'd love to get your followership. AJ and Shawn, their contact information, if you want to learn more about HeightZero, that's going to be inside the body of the show. So you can connect with them directly to learn more about their offering. I'm really excited about this space. And these two gentlemen are, very, very successful individuals. And, I'm looking forward to seeing this endeavor be, take off. And I think it's, it's an emerging space by every measure right now. And it's nice, at least from my seat where I sit, that you're kind of taking a go slow approach to this and not just trying to compete with many offerings. You're trying to do the due diligence in this platform, and the education is important. That's how we built our firm is financial literacy and education, and the product and the allocation is the easiest part of the whole process. It's the education that typically is not spent enough time on. So with that said, I'd like to thank both of you for coming on the show today, and we'd like to get you back for an update somewhere down the road as you start to evolve and this space starts to continue to grow, which we all think it will. But thanks again, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp